Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Half Pint session. So, technically, we are between seasons at the moment, but last season, as we were reading The Abolition of Man and listening to Lewis talk about the Tao, there was a book that is quite well known in the eastern parts of the church that I thought this is the perfect excuse to talk about it. Christ, the Eternal Tao. But because I don't know a whole lot, I thought I'd find somebody that did, or at the very least knew more than me. And I was put in touch with a gentleman called Melkite Joe. So Melkite Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would you mind just introducing yourself? Who are you and why do people call you Melkite Joe?
The nickname Melkite Joe was purely accidental. My hometown parish is Melkite Greek Catholic. I wandered north to Pittsburgh once upon a time, where there are a bazillion Byzantine Rite churches, chiefly Ukrainian, Ukrainian and Ruthenian, with I believe one Romanian in the city. And one of my first friends was from London, and Ukrainian Catholic. He's now the Ukrainian pastor in Charlotte. And when the name Joe would be dropped in conversation, people would eventually ask, well, which one? The one from London or the one who's Melkite? And so these nicknames were born out of that, just out of necessity for clarification and conversation. So he is still in my phone as London Joe today, even though he's a priest, and Melkite Joe. The nicknames are born out of that.
That's Father London Joe to you.
Father London Joseph, yes. That's what I call him. I just haven't updated the contact in my phone yet.
Well, if he was Ukrainian in London, I'm pretty sure I've been to the parish where he would have gone. It's Holy Family in Exile, I think it is.
I've been to London, but never to the Ukrainian parish there.
Oh,
So
it was wonderful. It was packed to the rafters. None of it was in English. It was literally the first Byzantine, full Byzantine liturgy I got to see. And I described it as a wonderful experience because I had to rely on the body language of the liturgy to look at what was happening, look at the symbolism, to try and work out what the heck was going on, because I couldn't tell from the words specifically what was happening. So pretty much whenever anything was being accompanied by candles, I knew it was probably a big deal.
Well, this reminds me of my initial visit to the Melkite parish. I was raised in a Catholic family in a charismatic Christian community. Despite its being in the Bible Belt, it's chiefly Catholic. It's probably 90% Catholics in this community. So people make a lot of jokes about it. You know, charismatic, some might jokingly say charismaniac, is historically more of a Protestant form of worship, and yet this community is chiefly Catholic, which is kind of awesome. They have their own neighborhood, which it's even in Google Maps as Faith Village, which is kind of cool. Some visitors say that it's the closest they've ever felt to being in the Shire. So this is where I grew up. I had a massive conversion experience through an Episcopalian youth retreat called Happening. And I internally tinkered with becoming Episcopalian. I wanted to wait till after high school just out of respect for my Catholic family. Things happened, different conversations took place in my senior year in high school that resulted in my remaining Catholic. So post-high school, post-graduation, I was church hopping around the various Catholic churches in Augusta, Georgia, my hometown, to see which do I want to be my parish. And being the Bible Belt, there's not many. I think in Augusta proper, there's three Roman Catholic churches: Most Holy Trinity, St. Joseph's, and St. Mary's. A few others in the outskirts and the kind of neighboring towns, but there's one Byzantine Catholic church. I wandered in with a brother-in-law who was in RCIA, and they took me there one Sunday just to see what kind of the rest of the church was like, and I never left. I was familiar with it, having read Scott Hahn's book, The Lamb's Supper, where he references the Byzantine liturgies quite a bit. The founding pastor of the parish and his wife were lifelong family friends, so the notion of a married priest is never weird to me, because I always knew a married priest, and I just never left. I know for me, I remember thinking it was the most kind of whole body experience of worship I'd ever encountered. Like I felt like my full five senses were engaged. Psychologists might call it psychosomatic in terms of the worship. And I just never left.
Well, I seem to remember that when people from, was it Vlad's kingdom? Is one of the kingdoms where they went out to go and look for what religion the kingdom was going to be, and they went to Hagia Sophia, and they said we didn't know if we were in heaven or on earth. Yeah. And that was also very much my experience of wandering into an Eastern church for the first
Yeah.
time. The sense of transcendence was wonderful. And yeah, I just described it as, I don't know if I've ever been in love, but if it's anything like walking into a Byzantine church, I think I know what you mean.
I can relate to that.
I will add, this was before I met my wife, so I can confirm, yes, that was love.
I want to ask real quickly, where exactly are you from? The accent.
So my accent is English,
Okay.
but I've been in the States now for nearly 2 decades. I officially became a citizen a year and a half ago, something like that.
Okay.
And I have a really obnoxious American flag eagle shirt that I wear on Independence Day just to prove the point.
So my older sister's husband is from England, and I never remember if it's Chester or Chesterfield. It's whichever is close to the Welsh border.
Probably Chesterfield, because I wouldn't have said Chester is, but
I never
my
remember.
English geography is also pretty terrible. Like I said, I've been here for 2 decades, so my knowledge of the US is now pretty good. And quite honestly, my geography of England is starting to disappear into a hazy mess at the back of my head.
Well, on July 4th, I missed this past year, which is ironic because it was the 250th, but to my brother-in-law and also to Father London Joseph, I normally send the same meme, which is just George Washington in profile, and the caption is, "It's only treason if you lose."
I would always send the meme, happy High Treason Day, ungrateful colonialists. But now that I'm American, I can still send that, but it's now self-deprecating humor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of geography, once upon a time, I spent a year living in a Ukrainian monastery in California. And while road tripping out there, I was on the phone with a friend in France who was trying to keep me awake on the phone. And we just got the bright idea, quiz me on the 50 states, the 50 capitals.
Oh.
And I got all 50 states and I think like 46 the capitals. And the ones that I missed, like my second or third guess, I got them. And we're talking like Pierre, South Dakota, the kind of random ones like that. But she was like, I don't know French geography to save my life. She goes, how do you know 50 states and 50 capitals?
Well, you at least more of it, I think, is taught in schools here. Whereas I can definitely say for my English education, I knew next to nothing about English history. It was actually mostly did American. So it stood me in good stead for my future life, but pretty poor whenever I'm having to do trivial pursuits back home.
Do the American version.
Probably safer. But let's talk about this book.
Indeed.
Christ, the Eternal Tao. Would you mind giving our viewers a little bit of a background? What the heck is this book? What's its sort of main claim? What does it mean by the Tao? And sort of where does all this come from?
Well, one of my favorites is, I believe it's right on the back here. Yeah, so there's the first section of the book past the introduction is selections from the Gospels that are written poetically in the style of the Tao itself. And I like this translation. In the beginning was the Tao, and the Tao was with God, and the Tao was God, and the Tao was made flesh and dwelt among us. And that apparently in Chinese translations of the Gospel of John, that is generally how the prologue is translated. One of the founders of, it's just known as the Platina Monastery in Platina, California. It's a prominent Orthodox monastery. Father Seraphim Rose. Some think he's kind of a polarizing figure. I won't say he wasn't entirely, but even if he was hugely influential, still is, in particular with the Russian church. A lot of he was American. A lot of his books were translated into Russian and were imported into the Soviet Union, which is fascinating. But prior to his conversion, he studied Chinese philosophy under a very renowned Taoist. I believe it was in San Francisco. And the introduction to the book covers all of that. So it's one of the few books that I actually recommend reading the introduction. I find introductions good to read after the book rather than telling me how I should interpret the book. Let me read the book and then read what your thoughts are on it.
Oh, you're one of those people. See, I spend my entire life telling people to read the prefaces and introductions that C.S. Lewis puts at the beginning of his books. So when people skip over them, it's just like, you have no idea what he's doing.
So if it's written by the author, always read it.
Okay.
But if it's written by like the publisher or the editor or the translator, I save it for the end.
Okay, I think that's more acceptable, and I actually think Lewis would agree, because he in one of his letters he's talking about when people want to get to know Homer or Plato, they always read a guide. He says, "Nah, just jump right into the real thing."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So as I said, the introduction is worth reading in this book, if nothing else, to learn some about the character of Father Seraphim Rose and how in his pre-Christian life he was really into Taoism and the Tao Te Ching. And when he became a Christian and specifically embraced Eastern Orthodox Christianity, like many Western Christians will point to philosophers like Plato, Socrates, and to some degree even Aristotle as being kind of pre-Christian thinkers. Like they would have embraced Christ if they lived at the time or after the time of Christ. Like they were so close to these kernels of truth in their philosophy of life. And Father Seraphim came to believe this about the Tao Te Ching as well. And so the author, Hieromonk Damascene, he wasn't one of the founding monks, but one of the early monks. I think, I looked this up this past week, I believe he joined the year or shortly before Father Seraphim died in the 80s. So he's been there for quite a while now. But his thing was kind of in devotion to the founder, I believe, to kind of put his philosophy out there. And I think it's become sort of kind of a sleeper hit of a modern spiritual classic. So again, the first section, it's selections of the gospel that are written in the style of the Tao Te Ching. And then the latter portion, for me, and keep in mind, I was living in a monastery when I started reading it. So the perspective of a monastic might be different than that of a layperson. But I found it to be the most beautifully written and thorough and clear explanation of the spiritual life. And just, deeper conversion. I know the East big with words like theosis, hesychasm, words like this. I've never read a more thorough and clear and just accessibly readable explanation of the spiritual life. It's absolutely beautiful. And I finished it after I left the monastery. So I guess I do have kind of the dual perspective of the layperson and monastic. Yeah.
And for people that are coming to this and haven't experienced these ideas before, or haven't listened to our podcast, because I have regularly spoken about how the church fathers viewed some of those pre-Christian figures, how Justin Martyr spoke about seeds of the Logos in Greek philosophy, how him and Clement of Alexandria, they looked back on some of these great philosophers and they basically said, they're one of ours, they're basically Christian. It can seem quite a shocking concept, but it makes a lot of sense that God was preparing the world both through specific revelation to the Hebrew prophets, but then also to the broader world, that his truth was being communicated. Lewis's favorite psalm was, the heavens declare the glory of God. Well, if the heavens declare it, some people tend to notice. And so the idea that we should find these seeds of Christ, seeds of the Logos, elsewhere, and people who seek truth start recognizing a truth that we would communicate maybe slightly differently, but you can still recognize it as the same truth. And this was something that Lewis reintroduced to me, because I went through a big early church fathers phase, and then it was only a little bit later I came to Lewis, and then he was bringing up these ideas. It was like, oh, these seem very familiar to me. But I just wanted to say a few words about that, because this is definitely very well rooted in Christian history, with Christians being, as Lewis would say, more liberal. Because he always thought that when you became Christian, you had to say no to lots of other things. He says, actually, no. Since I started believing in God, I started realizing that lots of people could have aspects of the truth that made much, much more sense of the world, rather than the everyone else is wrong and only I am right.
The phrase that I've come to use a lot is pious pagan.
Yeah. It's also works really well as an insult.
Depending on the tone of voice and context, but yes.
Exactly. Yeah. We didn't talk about this before, but is there a passage you would like to read about some of the sections that are rewritten in this Taoist style that you maybe like to read to give people a bit of a flavor of what this book is like?
Sure. I marked two of them in here just in case you asked that, actually.
Excellent.
Promise this wasn't rehearsed. Um, I would have to dig in the footnotes to find, because I guess one thing that some might find maddening is that for that section, it doesn't tell you specifically what chapter and verse it is in the Gospels referencing. But the book does have very, very thorough endnotes at the very end. But this is, if you have your copy, this is chapter 28 on page 111. And also, just, I'll put this on for the viewers. Another thing about this book that I love is this newly commissioned art of images from the Gospels, but in the Chinese style. So like this one here in particular is the entry into Jerusalem.
Yeah.
This absolutely beautiful. The ancient sage, follower of the way, said, "He who is conscious of honor and glory, yet keeps the disgrace, resembles the valley of the world. The way entered the city, and the crowd stood on either side of the road, shouting praises and blessings upon him. The children laid clothes and branches under the hooves of the child ass on which he rode. He was conscious of the honor and glory, yet he knew that he was going to his ultimate humiliation, that some of those who now shouted his praises would soon be shouting for his death. For he is a man of sorrows, as foretold the ancient prophet, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief."
It is quite wonderful. I had a particular long stint in the Protestant world, and that was when I discovered the Message Bible, and it gets some shade from some people, but I loved how I had to re-encounter a familiar text using different language, and how that jarring experience can make you pay attention again.
Yeah.
And I actually always said that was the same thing after my regular time in the Byzantine church, when out of necessity, because there's a Byzantine church very near us, and I'm back in the Roman Rite, that jolting shock of being in the Byzantine world makes me look upon the mass that I've gone to for the rest of my life with fresh eyes. And I think something definitely happens here when you're encountering something that you know very well, but now portrayed in a different language. It makes you pay attention in a different and experience it almost for the first time.
Yeah, that was my feeling when I was reading this in the monastery. So my old monastery is built in the Pacific Coastal Range Mountains, 2.5 hours north of San Francisco. If any listeners or viewers on the West Coast, I recommend Holy Transfiguration, also known as the monks of Mount Tabor, they call themselves sometimes. Beautiful location. If I remember right, when I moved in, it was 500 something acres. And, parts of the Pacific Northwest, Russia used to stake claims to some of that territory. And so the monastery, the canyon down below is Dead Horse Canyon, and the mountains on the other side of the canyon was initially claimed by Russia. And it's ironic, and this is not to get into politics here, but I was there when the current war with Russia and Ukraine started. And the owner of that property across the canyon, she donated it to the monastery, just gifted it for free.
Wow.
So we were making some Catholic dad jokes, like we're sitting in this Ukrainian monastery looking at old Russia, which is now owned by the Ukrainian monastery. But this was the setting. If we heard traffic, it was normally coming to the monastery, most of it. Airplanes overhead were very rare, just beautiful location. So really just kind of a perfect setting to kind of read something as deep as this book is. There's just not a lot of distraction.
Yeah. And I would recommend to anybody that was thinking about dipping into this book, you don't need to read much at a time. It is read a little story. This is like if you're the Western kind of person that does adoration, this is a really good book, or just something just to kick off a period of quiet or contemplation. Yeah, exactly. A period of contemplation. This is a really good jumping off point. Had you read the Tao Te Ching in any depth or anything else?
My only knowledge of it was honestly from the Abolition of Man. So over the years, I've easily read at least 20 works from Lewis. And actually, either last year or the year before, I read I did the math. I don't remember. It was, I think, 15 of his books or 20 of his books I read in that one year alone. Just,
Oh, that
it had
sounds
been
like
a
a good
while.
year.
Just wanted to binge on it. And this includes the Chronicles of Narnia and the Space Trilogy, and the Abolition of Man and the Screwtape Letters and the Great Divorce and Mere Christianity and Miracles. And it had been ages since I just sat down with Lewis. And he's one that kind of how a lot of the Christians will claim the ancient philosophers. Some of the Orthodox will claim Lewis as their own.
Oh yes,
I've heard this multiple times.
I have a collection of essays where he's referred to as the anonymous Orthodox.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, it's the funny thing. Like several years ago, we had an ecumenism month. I interviewed someone who was LDS, Eastern Orthodox theologian, a Baptist, a Presbyterian, and yeah, pretty much everybody's willing to claim him. He's a great gateway drug for some very good conversations,
Oh
and
yeah.
in this case, he's a fantastic excuse to dig into something that is actually very, very simpatico with a lot of his ideas and a lot of his outlook. But
Hmm.
I really just wanted to take the opportunity now that we've done the Abolition of Man just to put this on people's radar if they haven't encountered this book before, because I do think it is well worth a read. And if nothing else, if you sit in a coffee shop with this book, people are going to come and talk to you.
Yep.
Now you
I
might
have
you
had
you
that
might hate
happen.
that you might hate that, but if you do want to talk to people in coffee shops, a cover that looks like this with Chinese writing and Christ and Tao, people are gonna make some comments.
And also it's like a Chinese style of Christ, Pantokrator,
Hmm.
enthroned in glory. Again, kind of building back what I said earlier about the pictures all throughout the book. These original these original pieces of art that are done in the Chinese style. I love it.
Would you have any reservations or warnings or advice for anybody that would be dipping into this book?
Zero, absolutely zero. The book, some have expressed concern that it's kind of syncretism
Yeah.
or kind of ecumenism run amok,
Mm.
but the book goes to great lengths to argue to the contrary of that. And there's no, yeah, there's none of that in there that anybody might be concerned about. Because I think in general the Orthodox tend to be more ecumenically concerned, meaning concerned about ecumenism,
So, yeah.
than the rest. And the fact that this is written by a monk who was a disciple of Father Seraphim, who himself was notoriously anti-ecumenist, at least in his early days. If you read some of his letters in his later life, he seemed to be kind of softening some, where many speculate that maybe he would have actually become friendly with Catholics if
Oh
if
my
he if
goodness.
he lived longer, because he was in his 40s when he died of a stomach issue.
Oh, I had no idea he was actually that young.
I think he was like 48 or something like that, I believe.
Mm.
So yeah.
How would you suggest that this book has shaped your own understanding of Christianity, having encountered sort of this incarnation, should we say, or this way of presenting the faith
Hmm.
in Taoist terms?
Hmm.
How for you has that changed then, looking at the faith that you were raised in?
So I don't come from a Taoist background, and again, I had never read the Tao Te Ching, so I didn't come with all of this foreknowledge of really what I was getting into. So in that sense, it was very new for me in many regards. Um, I know in terms of like a healthy imagination, in terms of the spiritual life and prayer, and I emphasize healthy because I know a lot of the desert fathers, they condemn imagination. And then some in the Orthodox, even the Eastern Catholic, they're like, oh, Ignatius of Loyola went too far with imagination and prayer. And I'm not here to settle these debates, obviously. But that's why I use the phrase healthy imagination,
Mm-hmm.
because it takes a healthy imagination to view the gospel in a lens like this that doesn't sacrifice the gospel, that actually illuminates. And then again, in terms of that latter section, which is probably two-thirds of the book, that basically just unpacks the spiritual life. Um, I mean, if a follower of Jesus Christ, and I don't care what their flavor of Christianity is, if a follower of Jesus Christ reads that and is not moved and convicted to deeper faith and deeper prayer, then I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
If I think this might not even be a reservation, this is maybe to be expected being an Orthodox writer. I do remember specifically that there was one comment about the filioque, like one comment at one point. I was like, well, that's not quite what the Roman Catholics mean by that, but I understand from the perspective that you're coming from as the author of the book. It's just, it's a deep-seated issue with the Catholics and the Orthodox, you know. Um, so if any Western Catholics can stomach this one comment about the filioque, there is much, much spiritual fruit to be gained by reading this.
Mm. It's funny, yeah, because it no alarm bells went off as I went through, and I was like, oh, I sense an axe to grind. But at my Byzantine parish, when I lived in San Diego, pretty much all of our church's bookshop was Eastern Orthodox books by Eastern Orthodox writers from Eastern Orthodox presses. And only very occasionally would you find a little note saying, fantastic book, you might not like page 93. And that was the bit where the axe grinding happened. But other than that, it was very much enjoyed. But no, I would agree. There's a certain refreshing of the imagination that I really like of this book. It's almost like kind of like a palate cleanse, to allow you to come back to scenes in the life of Christ anew, and to hear it as if for the first time, to pay attention in a different way, as well as tying in with all of those wonderful ideas of as Lewis said, that God sent the pagans good dreams that ultimately find their fulfillment in Christ.
Yeah, amen to that.
Wonderful. Well, I can't believe half an hour has ripped by. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything else you'd like to share with the people?
Just one thing, I believe it's the appendix at the back of the book, is kind of a history of Eastern Orthodoxy in China, which is very fascinating. It's not a country that people historically associate much of a Christian presence in any sense. I know a famous Orthodox bishop from San Francisco. He's known as Saint John of Shanghai and San Francisco, because he served as bishop in the two cities at different points. His tomb is actually at the Orthodox Church, Russian Orthodox Church in San Fran, and his relics are incorrupt. I've been there multiple times. My last time that I was there, I had some time to kill before meeting up with a friend. And I parked in front of the church and said, you know what, I don't know when the Orthodox celebrate his feast day, but I'm going to go to his Wikipedia page, find the feast date, and go to this Orthodox page again that has all of the propers for the Byzantine office. I'm not making this up. That day was his feast day. And I'm like, okay, I am supposed to be here. So I got one of the canons that you find in Orthros or Matins, and I prayed at his tomb that day. Very beautiful. But he's associated with the Chinese church, served in Shanghai, and he's also associated with Father Seraphim Rose. Even before Father Seraphim fully converted, he was still living a homosexual lifestyle. He was running the Orthodox bookstore that's still there, just right at the corner, at the end of the block on the church there. And so it was through that saint witness to the faith, the bishop that led Father Seraphim to the faith, which eventually led him down to the monastery, and eventually led to this book through the way of the author. So,
a lovely golden chain. And it's also worth pointing out that there's another connection with Lewis, because Warney was out in the East and he had his own independent conversion back to the faith while in the East through Eastern religion as well. But you did mention that you had 2 passages marked out in your book. So to wrap things up, would you mind reading us the second?
Sure. And this is just the very next one in the list there. If you wanted to follow yourself, page 112. The ancient sage, follower of the way, said, "He who is conscious of honor and glory, yet keeps the disgrace, returns to pristine simplicity. The way left the city and descended into the valley of the world. Ascending again to the other side of the valley, he came to a garden, like unto the primordial garden in which his love had once been betrayed. And now the duplicitous one, pretending to return his love, betrays him with a kiss. Now the duplicitous one, pretending to do him reverence, disgraces him in front of all. Love ushers in freedom, but the duplicitous one puts him in shackles. The duplicitous one delivered the simple one to death, and the simple one was brought back into the city. Before he had entered in honor to be led to final disgrace, now he enters in disgrace to be led to final honor. He being himself the way on which he trod, the way of return to pristine simplicity.
Wonderful stuff. Melkite Joe, thank you for being on the show.
Been an honor. I will look you up when I'm in Wisconsin next. I'm known to road trip around the country periodically, so.
Perfect. Well, when you're next in God's country, come find me.
Amen. G's country.
Not what I said. Okay. And viewers, please join us again next time. We'll continue going further up and further in. Cheers.
Thank you.